Hey everybody, this is Dale with Networking Step by Step. And in today's video cheat sheet, we're going to hard code the OSPF router ID on router 2. Hey everybody, this is Dale with Networking Step by Step. And in today's video cheat sheet, we're going to hard code the OSPF router ID on router 2. So let's look at what we're going to do. We're going to do some baseline show commands to see what the router looks like before we make any changes. We're going to hard code the router ID on router 2, and then we're going to do some verification show commands and compare to the baseline to see if anything's changed. So let's look at the network topology. We're going to be hard coding the router ID here on router 2. I've already done it throughout the rest of the network, so we're going to exclusively look at router 2. We're going to start with show IP OSPF, which shows us that the routing process has already been enabled, which we did in the previous video cheat sheet, and it has already grabbed an ID of 2.2.2.2, and it did this dynamically, and there's a reason for that, and you can check out the configuration guide to find out the reason. But we're going to hard code our router ID. We're not going to leave it up to a dynamic process. So the router ID can be hard-coded in an IP address format. So you can pick any IP address. Now I highly recommend that it be the management IP address or the loopback 0 address of that particular router. Now as an experiment, let's type in the router ID of 3.3.3.3, which, if you remember, is the loopback 0 address of router 3. So that IP address is not even here on router 2. And it took the command. So let's go back and look at the show IP OSPF command that we used earlier. And as you can see, the routing process is still enabled with an ID of 3.3.3.3. Now that's not good, because if you wanted to run OSPF between router 2 and router 3, they're both going to claim to have the router ID of 3.3.3.3, and the adjacency will not come up, so you don't want that. So you're going to want to hard code the router ID to, once again, the management address or the loopback 0 address of the particular router you're working on. In our case is router 2. So the loopback 0 address of router 2 is 2.2.2.2. So we put that in there. Let's do the show IP OSPF command again. And as you can see, the router ID changed to 2.2.2.2, which is once again the address it chose dynamically before. But it's just better to hard code it so that things do not change on you in the middle of the night if some other loopback addresses are added. And once again, the configuration guide explains how this could be. So now I'm going to do a show run pipe begin router OSPF to actually look at the running config to see what it looks like now. So here's our router process, and here's the router ID that we hard coded of 2.2.2.2. So that's all there is to it. We hard coded the router ID of router 2, so now it matches the rest of the network, where router 1 had a router ID of 1.1.1.1 and 3 had a router ID of 3.3.3.3, and so on and so forth throughout the network. So that's how you configure an OSPF router ID. I hope this lesson has been helpful, and we'll see you guys on the next lesson.